morning, ma'am. Good morning, one and all. I welcome you all for PCA Troubleshooting and Hardware Maintenance Program. It's my pleasure to welcome the chairperson of Sri Saram Institution, Sri Sai Prakash Leomudu sir, and Dr. K. Palani Kumar, Principal of Sri Saram Institute of Technology, Dr. B. Sri Devi ma'am, HOD of CSC, and organizers Mrs. D. Rajalakshmi ma'am and J. Tirnavakar sir. I welcome you all. Without any delay, I would like to welcome the speaker, Dr. G. Merlin Glinda ma'am, who had completed BE in Shakti Marimaran Engineering College and ME in Jerusalem College of Engineering and PhD in Anna University. She is working as an assistant professor, the Department of Computer Science and Engineering in SRM IST Vadaparani campus. She also worked as an assistant professor in the Department of Information Technology in Tagore Engineering College from August 2010 to June 2017. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Hello,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, shall I take over the session?
Yes, ma'am. Proceed, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Thank you. So, good morning, ma'am. Thank you for the introduction and good morning, participants. So, we will be seeing in today's session about motherboard BIOS and troubleshooting, right? So, basic input output system. So, I'll be speaking about what is BIOS, CMOS, and so we'll be seeing about how the BIOS structure will be and what is the function of BIOS, and also CMOS systems, and we'll see that how we'll be booting BIOS and what the problems will happen when we are booting the system BIOS, and we'll see that tomorrow, maybe today or tomorrow session, we'll be seeing about the troubleshooting. So in order to understand the troubleshooting problems, we want to know what is BIOS, and also we need to know what is the setup utility that BIOS will look like. If you understand what is how motherboard BIOS function will look like, actually what it is, then only we will able to understand the problems the BIOS is facing. Right, so let me go in detail about BIOS. We'll see about more detail about troubleshooting, how we'll be solving the problems when there is a problem in a system's BIOS, that is booting setup. We'll see all those details, right? So let me carry on with my session. So yesterday's session we have seen in about major working components of the computer systems. I have shown you the virtual desktop simulator, the tool which we can able to see virtually. We can able to see the working functionalities of RAM and also components of RAM. So we have come across different basic systems where RAM is and how the CD will look like, and where the an IC function is, what are the cables present there. We have come across different basic setup present in the computer systems. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's session, right? So we'll go into the motherboard, right? So what is BIOS? So let me give the introduction about the BIOS and what is BIOS. First, we want to know what is that people are saying about boot, and what is actually that BIOS. So BIOS is nothing but a basic input output system. So it is nothing but it is a ROM chip found on motherboard that allow you to access and set up your computer system. So it is you know what is ROM, right? Read only memory. So it's a fixed, the chip is fixed, right? So it is a ROM chip found on motherboard that allow you to access and set up your computer system at the most basic level, right? So the the BIOS, we can see that the picture I have given in the slide in the right side. So it's a early AMI BIOS BIOS type. So what is this AMI BOS BIOS type? What does the AMI description means? That AMI is nothing but American Megatrends Incorporation. So it's like a vendor who will be distributing the chips, who will be using in our booting purposes. Like one of the distributor, that vendor is AMI. So what is AMI? It's American Megatrend Incorporation. They have it's a manufacturing vendor who distributed that chip for various purposes. We'll see that what is the purposes we'll be using that BIOS. So it is at the time that AMI is the world largest manufacturing vendor distribute the vendor. You can see that in that chip itself they have written AMI BIOS, and some number has been given, that the chip version number. It's an American Megatrend. So AMI means American Megatrend Incorporation. I for incorporation, basic input output system. So this is at the time it was very good manufacturing company. So it's one of the types. So the first BIOS was developed by Gary Kildall, and it included in the CPM operating system. I'll tell you what is the CP So we have a lot of work in progress in CPM. So actually, why we need a BIOS means, BIOS is look like it's like a chip. You can see here, right? It's a hardware chip, and it will be present in your motherboard. I hope you able to recall, yesterday we have seen that motherboard. So I have shown virtually in the desktop simulator how the motherboard look like. We have designed this motherboard by placing various component into the parts of the CPU, right? So Kindle coined the term BIOS to describe a part of the machine. So why Kindle has given the label as BIOS? Why the author Kindle, Gary Kindle, has named that term as a BIOS means, it will describe. BIOS means it, you can see that label, the description, basic input output system, right? So which means that it's a machine. So the chip will function the machine to work, right? So it's a part of a machine that loads it, boot up and communicate with other hardware, which means that when I click the power button in my CPU or my laptop, the system is starting. So it will tell the other parts of the computer system to start up the work, which means that once I click the power button, the machine will start. Boot means it will start our system, and it will communicate with the other hardware machine to pass the information, flow of the current, or flow of the processing information. You can call it any manner, to start up your working progress of the system. So which is nothing but it's a basic level, right? So it is just a machine is starting the working progress of the system. So we can, by seeing itself, we can tell that a machine is starting the system. It's a very groundwork. So that's why Gary Kindle has named that as a BIOS, which means nothing but a basic input output system, right? So this is about, and I will see that the first BIOS was developed by Gary Kindle and included in the CP BARM operating system. So what does the word mean by that CP BARM? So what does it say is that? So the CP BARM is nothing. Sorry. Again, okay. Well, let me tell this one. I'll go back to the slide. So CP BARM means that it's an 8-bit operating system. It's like the bit. Now we are having 64-bit, 32-bit, and 128-bit versions are available. You can able to see your systems, what type of operating system you are, what type of bit your system is holding. So for that, you can go to, if you have a my computer, just click on with that. Yeah, this PC, right click your PC and go to properties. So if you going to the properties, you will able to see the description about the system, like device specification, device name, processor, installed RAM, how much RAM your system holds, device ID, what type of device ID your system has, what is the product ID, what is the system what system type your machine is holding. So it's you can see here, right? It's a 64. Currently, the laptop which I am using to teach you a 64-bit operating system with x64 based processor. I'll come to that. Processor is nothing but a it's a CPU or microprocessor that handles all instruction it receives from the hardware and software running on the computer. So that is the basic information about the processor. So it handles all instruction it receives from the hardware and software running on the computer. So pen and touch support, yes, pen I can able to use pen for writing. This laptop is not touch oriented, so you can see some there are advanced laptop I can able to touch on the screen and I can able to scribble, I can point out, I can able to paint, I can able to all the things. So you can see that this is the very small information about the device, what type of device I am using. So processor is Intel Core, what type of processor, what type of CPU gigahertz, what version I am using, so how much RAM this laptop holds, all the details you can see here, right? So let me go to the slide now. So that is it. It is given here. The first BIOS, the CPU M, is an 8-bit operating system. Initially, it has been the operating system is based on 8-bit. It is created by the Gary Kildall in 1974 while working at Intel for their new processor. While they are the others are developing their new processor, they developed a 8-bit operating system in while they are working with the Intel, right? For Intel, I hope you know what is Intel. Intel is a type of processor, right? By 1977, CP bar M was the most popular operating system in the PC industry. So, for performing your PC operations, CPM was more popular operating system. So, in 1981, Microsoft purchased the right for this this operating system. So actually it was been developed, the first 8-bit operating system has been developed in Intel, but later in 1981 Microsoft purchased the rights to authorize the clone of CP Baram, which means that 8-bit working operating system. So Microsoft bought the one of the rights, CP Baram, and they copied that 8-bit operating system programming, and they have market they have started releasing their own operating system in terms of IBM. So you see here how the working is coming. So initially uh, Intel have working, they have started developed in Intel, but they have Microsoft purchased the rights and they have started clone means they copied the same code and they released their own version, they called as IBM as PC's DOS for the first IBM PC, right? So now what is this word CP Baram? CP means cost per mile. So cost per mile or cost per thousand. So either CPT or CPM. So CPM is a measure of ad impression and an industry standard for selling ads on websites. So that is one of the at the time functionality they have used. Will in order to it's a cost oriented to use that 8-bit operating system and to sell their industry standard with some other, they have used a cost per mile as a, like it's like a scale to measure the standards, right? So the M is from the Roman numeral for thousand, so either it can be a mile or it can relate it with a thousand. So this is about the CP baram. You don't want to see much about the CPM. Just you have to know why that CPM, because we'll have some troubleshooting error later. We're going to see that. Uh, I'll be discussing about some of the troubleshooting options this bias is going to encounter. So when I'm going to tell the error, you want to know the working details. If you know the working details only, you will able to understand where that troubleshooting is going to occur. So that's why I'm giving some description about the bias. So we seen that, right? That's why it's coming here. The first BIOS was developed by Gary Kindle and included in the CPM operating system, which is in 1974. Right. So it's just about what is BIOS. So BIOS software, BIOS is a software. It's a program or it's a boot. It's built in the PC on a non-volatile ROM, and it's the first code run by a PC when powered on. So BIOS software is stored on a non-volatile ROM chip on the motherboard. It will be present in the motherboard. It is specifically designed to work with each particular model of a computer or each functional parts of a computer. So a BIOS has a user interface, typically a menu system accessed by pressing a certain key on the keyboard when the PC start. How we can able to see the BIOS? I'll show the screenshot little bit later. So it's like a user interface screen. When I initially start my system, if I press the, actually there are a lot of keys are there in order to see the BIOS setup. Either in some system there'll be you have to press F1, some system they have to press F2, F3, or escape or delete, or while you're initially starting your CPU. So if I click the escape button continuously, it will we can see the BIOS setup. Or if I'm clicking the delete button, or if I'm clicking some combination of F1, F2 keys with Alt control, I can able to see the structure of the BIOS or the setup utility functions of the BIOS. So typically a menu system accessed by pressing a certain keys on the keyboard when the PC starts. That's what I'm telling. So in the BIOS user interface, BIOS the user can, what are the things if I can see in the BIOS setup, what are the things I can able to do by seeing the BIOS setup. So let me show the screens for you at this time. Actually, I kept that BIOS. It's last, so you can see that this is how it looked like. So it's CMOS setup. Actually, um, I'll say what a CMOS little bit later, but you can see that this is how you'll be getting that standard CMOS features, advanced BIOS features like power management setup, and set user password, load, fail, frequency, voltage. I'll be getting all these functionality when I initially starting my PC, right? So let me go back to the yes. So we can configure the hardware. We can set the system clock, enable or disable the system components, which means if I do this while I'm performing some operation inside the system, when I'm system starts, I cannot so I cannot able to open some components. Should be very careful when you are doing this booting operation. So your whole system functionality will be working on with the boot features, right? So it will select which devices are eligible to be potential boot device. So set various password prompts, such as password for securing access to the BIOS UI and functions itself, preventing malicious users from booting the system from unauthorized peripheral device. So all these options we can able to do while we are getting that booting option, right? So these are the main functionalities of basic input output system. So what has told you, right? This is CPM is the first BIOS as we have seen. So what is the need of this BIOS? By using this BIOS utility setup, what I am able to do in my system? What is the PC's main need? So the BIOS includes instruction on how to load the basic computer hardware. So it includes instruction on how to load basic computer hardware. So it also included test referred to as a post. We'll see about what is post shortly. The power on self test that help verify a computer meets requirement to boot up properly. So the post is one of the component. It's called as a power on self test. So when we are going to set up the BIOS, so the post function, it will verify the computer is able to meet the functionality of the property correctly, which means that if I have some BIOS setup, if I am changing some hardware design, so you know what is hardware software, right? If I am changing my hardware functionality, any setup which I am changing, so the post will verify the changing functionality, whether this requirement is able to meet the PC's requirement, or if the current inside the functionality OS requirement, it is not able to satisfy the whatever the features which I have changed, it will show the troubleshooting error. So we have to check that what problem the BIOS has encountered. I have to change the functionality, then I have to goes on, right? So if the computer does not pass the post, if the computer does not pass the power on self test, you will be hearing a lot of combination of beeps. That's why I told you, right? If the when I said something, if I change anything in the BIOS, the post will verify what are the changed feature is correct or not. If the changed feature is correct, it will go on with the next step. If the changed feature is not correct, I will get different sound. We'll see that what are the combination of beeps available, indicating what is malfunctioning in the computer. So you might have wondered that while you are in lab, so when you initially start your PC, you will be getting different tones. Some system will give single beep tone, some system will be getting continuous beep tone. There are different types of beep tones indicating the meaning of the different problem. So if it is a single beep tone, that problem is different. If there is a double beep tone, that is the different, it indicate different problem. If it is a continuous ringing beep tone, then the problem is different. So it indicating the what kind of malfunctioning the BIOS has encountered, right? We'll see that what are the types of beeps are available. So the function of BIOS, so of course post is one of the function, one of the main function uh, while we are setting up the function BIOS. So post test the computer hardware and make sure no error exists before loading the operating system. That's what I told you, right? If you are providing any new change in the BIOS setup, it will test itself with the operating system. If the operating system, if the BIOS the changed feature ourselves is incorrect, the operating system will not give permission to log in into the system. So we will be stuck in that initial stage itself. We cannot able to open your system itself, which means that we will not get the login screen. We have to check that what problem in the BIOS, we have to recorrect it. Once the again post has to check that the corrected feature is correct with the operating system, then only it will allow us to enter. So bootstrap loader locate the operating system. If a capable operating system is located, the BIOS will pass the control. So it will check the particular feature is correct with the operating system. If the operating system is cross checked with everything with the features, it will pass the control to the operating system, which we can further process. BIOS drivers. There are a lot of drivers present in the BIOS. In that, I have shown a picture, right? So this is the BIOS, right? You can see that structure. So you can see that it's not only a plain chip. Inside a lot of core components are available. So, so this will be different. Each and different resistor, capacitor will function correctly. Then only the chip will function, or otherwise we'll have a failure. So this BIOS drivers, it low level drivers that give the computer basic operational control over your computer hardware. So it will check all the drivers, all the functionalities are performed correctly. So BIOS setup or BIOS setup or CMOS setup. So how the BIOS setup or CMOS setup will be performed? So the configuration program that allow you to configure hardware settings. So how you are going to do that? So the configuration program that allows you to configure hardware setting, including system settings such as date, time, computer passwords, anything we can do, right? So we actually, what is the need of doing that setup? For example, if my computer hardware settings, my date is a problem. So there is a, if you take your lab PC, when you change the system, it's a system time. If the currently my time is 10:45. So what do I'll do? I'll go to my PC. I'll set. So let me show you that. So you can see here, right? The system setting time is there. So if I go there, mm, okay, okay. So it's saying that to get started. Let me check that what is I am getting here. I can able to set my time. So my time, it says that 10:30. You can see my screen now. So it's not needed. Just a minute. Mm, okay. I can click the. It's not coming. Actually, we'll get here. Change system timings. Mm, I'm unable to do here. Okay, just a minute. Okay, we have some other option. If you this window 10, I cannot be able to see here. But if you seeing the window 7, if I click the time, it will go to the set time. So we can able to set. Sorry, we can able to set the time. So, but the problem I encounter, even I have faced this. After setting the time 10:39, if I restart the system, I can see the time is 9:40. So so if I change the system, if the time is not 10:40, it is you assume the time is 9. So what I am doing, I'm correcting the time to 10:40. So when I restart my system, again the time will change to 9. It will not change correctly because that is booting. Even the while the system starting booting itself, the time not has been managed properly. So that is the point I'm going to tell you. So bias itself, if the problem is occurring continuously, this is one kind of problem. So if you are changing your system timing, it is not the system time. When we restart your system, you will complete all your laptop works or system work. Next day when you start your system, you can see the time is not perfect. Again you have to go and change the system timing. So why this troubleshooting, this is also one of the problems. Why this is happening is because the booting itself, the time is not set configured properly. So you have to go to the, you have to switch on your PC, switch off your PC. You have to select the BIOS setup by pressing by F1, F2, F3. I cannot able to show you now. If I am doing BIOS setup, my system, I cannot able to present my screen. So if I have some other option, I will show you that screenshot. So we have to continuously press the F1, F2, F3 or escape option. You'll be getting the BIOS setup screen. There you have to change the date, time or computer password, which is whatever the problem it is causing in the BIOS setup, right? So I'll tell you about CMOS setup. CMOS setup is different, BIOS setup is different. But we can call BIOS or CMOS, but both are not same. So BIOS is different, CMOS is different, entirely different. We'll see about more about CMOS also. So this is about the BIOS setup. So some not all the troubleshooting problems are arising in the BIOS. Some problem which we cannot able to solve in the PC, that has been resolved in the BIOS setup only, right? So CMOS. What is CMOS? It is called as a real-time clock, that is non-volatile RAM, NVRAM, or CMOS RAM, that is complementary metal oxide semiconductor. The CMOS is nothing but a complementary metal oxide semiconductor. It's a real-time clock, non-volatile RAM, or CMOS RAM, right? So CMOS is an onboard battery-powered semiconductor chip inside computers that stores information. CMOS is an onboard, it's in battery power. You can see that. So it will be present in the BIOS setup. So I have shown you one diagram, right, initially. See here. So here in that BIOS, the that CMOS component will be present. So, but we can call it as a BIOS or CMOS. BIOS is a utility setup. CMOS is a battery semiconductor chip that stores the computer informations, right? So this information ranges from system time. I told you a very good example about system time and date to system hardware settings for your computer. Like if your audio or video is not good, your PC is not connecting, we cannot able to hear your mic. Although you are resetting your audio options, video option, still your device we cannot able to hear your audio video, means you have to configure your BIOS setup once again. Then sometimes that troubleshooting problem will resolve your audio video options also. So this is about your CMOS. So the common CMOS coin cell battery. So this is the like Panasonic, the type of the CMOS battery which I am showing for you is Panasonic CR 2032 3V, one of the type. There are a lot of CMOS vendors are available who will be producing the battery for BIOS setup. So what is post? I told you, right? We'll be seeing about more about the post. So it means that power on self test. So post include instruction to perform internal test. See here, internal test. So this will be if I am setting some option. So if I am changing the BIOS utility setup, this will check internally whether the that settings given by that user is correct or not. So designed by device manufacturer. The instructions are stored in ROM, read-only memory, and performed every time the computer system is started. See, once that power on self-test has the feature we have given in the BIOS is correct, means the ROM memory will be each time when the ROM memory store the features in the ROM. Once each time when we start our system, that particular BIOS will run automatically the feature, and if there is a error, the troubleshooting will come. If there is no error, we can move into the system to work with the different functions. So when the PC startup, the first job of the BIOS is the power on self test. It will check that all the functions in the systems are correct by doing the power on self test, which initializes and test system component such as CPU, video display card, memory hard disk drive, and other hardware. So the BIOS can then locate bootloader software. So then the hardware will give the functions to the loader software operating system from the hard disk or CD or DVD, and then load and execute the software, giving control to the PC. Right? Initially, the hardware itself tests all the self mechanism itself. Once the working functionalities all are correct, the hardware will give the control to the booting loader software. That is different. That boot loader software is different from a hard disk. Then it will load and execute the software and further control to the PC mechanisms. And there are some types of CMOS available. The standard lifetime of a CMOS battery is around 10 years. You can able to see, you might have encountered some error. Suppose your system will not start up. So that is one problem, is your battery problem. That means your power control problem. That is different. Otherwise, your system CMOS battery may corrupted, which means that you have to tenderly have to change that BIOS utility motherboard itself. That will cost nowadays it will cost about 8,000 to 7,000. That single battery, if you want to change the motherboard battery. So if this battery is going down. However, this can vary depending on the use and environment where the computer resides. So it is purely depending upon the environment and the usage of the system. So some of the devices use a CMOS. What are the other devices that is CMOS is using? See, where and all we are using the CMOS. So one where we are using the CMOS digital logic circuit. So in digital logic circuit we are using CMOS. What is digital logic circuit? The circuit that perform a processing or controlling functions in a computer, that is called as digital logic circuit. And the second where we are using this CMOS, static RAM. So what is the static RAM? It requires a constant power flow to hold the information. So all the information need to be temporary information. You know that RAM is a temporary, right? It need to temporary information need to upgraded in the RAM and downgraded, upgraded, so and so. So that will be processed in the RAM. So what about the microprocessors? The microprocessors are otherwise called CPU or processor. It handles all the instruction it receives from the hardware and the software running on the computer, right? That is the central processing unit. We'll call about CPU, right? So that is about the processor. So now there is a question, can a BIOS chip be upgraded or updated? Yes, we can do both the thing, the BIOS. Either I can upgrade my BIOS or I can update my BIOS. Both are different, which means that I can update it or I can use upgrade my BIOS. So adding additional memory to a BIOS chip as an upgrade can only be done by replacing the BIOS chip. So if I want to upgrade my BIOS, I have to replace the BIOS, right, with a new more advanced BIOS chip. So if I want to update the BIOS, so I can use a flash BIOS. There is a concept called flash BIOS. So I can use that concept called flash BIOS to update my BIOS, right? So there are two different concept of BIOS. Either I can upgrade or I can update my BIOS. If I want to I want to use I want the BIOS chip to be upgraded. Then what should I do? I can only do upgrading by replacing the BIOS chip with a new upgraded BIOS version. Right, in the existing BIOS chip, I cannot able to do any BIOS upgrading. While if I want to update the BIOS, then there is a concept called flash BIOS. With the help of the flash BIOS, I can execute the set of instruction and update the BIOS. Right. So a flash BIOS is a boot option using a special disk or execute a set of instruction. I can use a there is a I don't know whether you flash. They're in olden days, but now we are not using. We'll be using pen drive. Even though if you want to use, if I want to use new operating system in my system, I'll be using OS. I will be sorry. I'll be using pen drive or CDs to boot my OS. So, but here they are using a flash BIOS. A flash BIOS is nothing but a set of instruction. There will be a specific instruction with an option called flash BIOS. With by choosing that flash BIOS option, I can update the BIOS. So using specially designed software, the BIOS can be updated to fix problems or add new features. So you can see here, if you are getting a troubleshooting option related to a BIOS, right? So what you have to do, either you can go for updated BIOS or you can go for upgraded BIOS. So both upgraded and updated BIOS will able to fix the problems, right? And or add new features for the motherboard. So that is about we can use either updated or upgraded type of option to include new feature, to update new feature, or to replace your existing BIOS with the upgraded versions. So now comparison between BIOS or CMOS. I told you that BIOS are CMOS, but BIOS is different, CMOS is different. Now what is BIOS and what is CMOS? So BIOS is a firmware stored in the chip on your computer motherboard. So it is the first program that runs when you turn on your computer. So like it's like working of the program. So you can see some binary codes will be running when I hope everyone might have seen when you're starting an initial PC, right? Instead they are, so when you make changes to your BIOS configuration, the settings are not stored on the BIOS chip itself. It will be stored in the ROM, right? We have seen previously. So instead they are stored on the special memory chip. The type of ROM is called a CMOS type ROM, that memory semiconductor device. So it's a name of manufacturing process used to create a processor RAM and digital logic circuit, and also the name of chips created using the process, which you have seen some different types of devices which they will be using the CMOS. So this is, we can see here BIOS information. So I'll show you how we can able to see that BIOS information. So we can able to see this BIOS information by if you type here command cmd command prompt. One second. Command prompt run, we'll be getting a run option. Then you have to type system information system then we can able to see this information. This is one type of how we can, what type of BIOS our system version is, and this is how the BIOS setup utility will be, and this how we will be updating. So when I'm clicking yes, the system will update the BIOS. So it will check with the current functionality with the operating system. If any crash in the feature, BIOS feature is there, it will resolve it automatically, right? So I told you that before going to that, let me show you that system information where we can look the BIOS in your system. So you type MSIN432. So you type MSIN432, enter in that search. See here, you can able to see that what type of operating system my system is. See, OS name is Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise. The version of the operating system Windows is 10.0.19, when at what year? 19 built on 19042. Other OS description, I'm not using any other kind of operating system. Only one operating system is available, so it is showing not available. The manufacturer of the operating system is OS is Microsoft. System name is desktop TVR L7 double. That is the laptop which I am using. Manufacturer owner is Dell. System model is Inspiron. But it's one of the options related to system type, right? So the processor i5, that what is the megahertz CPU capacity, how many processor I can use, four logical processor this processor will support. So BIOS, see here, BIOS version, see I'm highlighting BIOS version, Dell Incorporation. So this BIOS version, for this in this my laptop, the BIOS version is manufactured by Dell people only. So they have they have developed their own BIOS and they have included in the laptop. So the BIOS version is not given by some other. Dell people only, they have manufactured the BIOS and they have included in the laptop. So you can see here, right? So it's a A01 type. The model of the Dell BIOS is A01. 4/11/2014 it has been developed. So SMB iOS version 2.8. It is other version, supporting version of this BIOS. So the controller version is 0.01. BIOS mode is legacy. So and so you can see all the details. So why I have gone into this is BIOS version, now to show that how what type of BIOS version my laptop which I am using. So how I gone here? Let me type the command in the chat for you. You can, one second. So you have to use this keyword MSINFO32. If you are using this keyword, you can able to find out what BIOS information is present in your PC. So these are some of the other than that, I told you, right, if you when you're starting the system, BIOS utility will also start. So at the time, if your system is not incurring any problem, it will carry on with the functionality. Sometimes you'll be getting some different beep tone if you have any system failure. If the system is corrupted, you'll be getting different beep tones. So what are the different beep codes are available? No beep means short, no power, bad CPU, loose peripheral. So it'll be description of problem. So which means that there will be a problem other than that, short, no power, bad CPU or MP, loose peripheral. One beep means everything is normal and computer posted fine, which means that the uh, posted component will say that everything is fine. So 2b means post CMOS error, which means that battery error. So post bar, which means that post is telling that CMOS is having a problem if you are getting 2 beep. So one long beep, one short beep. So the beep type will be one long beep, then one short beep. So if the beep, we are able to listen the sound like this, motherboard problem. So there will be a problem with the motherboard. So there is a lot of circuit functionality in the motherboard, that is quite different to analyze what is the component present in the motherboard. We don't want to do that. Because when I explain tomorrow session about the troubleshooting, if you know about these things, it will be able to understand very easily. So we can see that this I told you, right? Again, if one long beep, two short beep, or one long beep, three short beep, there is a video problem. Three long beep, keyboard error problem. Repeated long beep, memory error problem. Continuous high-low beeps, CPU overheating. So these are the different. You can ask me, ma'am, how you are saying that these kind of beeps is any? Yes, when the BIOS utility setup has been developed, the error will be indicated with the help of different sound. We will not able to display the messages. This post will be indicating the type of error, with the help of with sounds only. Most probably, at the initial stages, we will not get the type of problem directly. We have to understand the meaning of the sound, then we have to analyze what kind of error message it is able to conveying to us. So there are many other types of BIOS like IBM, AMI. I told you, right, about Phoenix, so and so. So these are the some of the BIOS related with the IPM post, AMI post. The manufacturer, each and different manufacturer will convey that type of BIOS messages with different tones. See here, IBM If the BIOS manufacturer is IBM, the post will convey that messages in the BIOS. See, one short beep, normal post. Two short beep means post error. No beep means power supply or system board problem. Continuous beep means power supply, system board or keyboard problem. Repeating short beep means power supply or system board problem. One long, one short beep means system board problem. One long, two short beep means display adapter problem. One long, three short beep means enhanced graphic adapter problem. Three long beep means keyboard. So on. So I have listed only few. There are different tones like that beeps available. So this is the manufacturer vendor is IBM. So if the manufacturer vendor is AMI, then the beep will be different. So AMI, Award, Phoenix. So this all will be conveying the error message in the BIOS setup in different manner, right? So you can refer this later. So this is about the BIOS. I hope you understand what is BIOS now. So for example, as you are a student, if you are a student or if you are a faculty, suppose if you are in a system, in your lab, or if you are in your home own PC, if you are getting different while you're starting, when you're starting your PC or laptop, if you are able to analyze the different beep sound, then you should able to understand. You don't want to get panic. So by listening the beep sound, you have to you can able to find that what happened in your system. So that is the about the BIOS. So even when I initially when I was studying, that was different. When I used to have different kinds, when I used to start my system in the lab, I'll be getting some system will give different kinds of sound, right? You'll be knowing about the people lab technician. They can able to identify that BIOS errors very easily. So they are seeing that BIOS utility setup very oftenly. They will easily identify when you are calling your lab technicians or any technical people. If they listen once that BIOS tones, different beep sound, they'll tell instantly what type of problem the system has encountered, right? So by listening this session, I hope you can able to understand what is this BIOS and what is the necessity of the BIOS. And you also can able to understand that system failures in future if you are coming across anywhere, right? So that's it about the today's sessions, and there are some questions you can able to get it from the sessions which we have seen so far. Why does the computer beep every day? You have to analyze the question. Why does the computer beep every time? Not every time it will beep. That is rare case, but sometimes you'll get one beep. That one beep means system is processed correctly, right? So why it is important to know the different beeps when dealing with computer? Because why we need to know that? Because even ourselves, when we able to know the beep sound, we can able to have a confidence that the system is problem with video problem or motherboard problem. System is heating more oftenly. So we can able to solve that. Sometimes even the system is heating frequently, even though you are going to work in the system might crash. So you should able to know that the problem the system is going facing, right? How do you know that BIOS you are using on your computer, right? So we can able to, I told you, right? I told you one command, ms info 32. Using that, you can able to know the version of what type of BIOS you can able to find from your computer. What is the BIOS used for and its purpose? So we have seen that BIOS is used for finding that it able to pass the control to the hardware software for further functionality, right? So these are the main questions we have come across. Tomorrow session I'll be telling you the only the troubleshooting problems that BIOS is encountering. So we have seen all the functionalities. What is BIOS? What are the types of BIOS? What is the BIOS is? How BIOS is functioned with other CMOS. So and so all the description we have seen, right? Tomorrow I'll show you how I'll show you that I cannot able to show you the demo because BIOS. I'll show you that working steps of the BIOS, how we can able to solve what is the problem we can encounter in BIOS, how we can able to solve the troubleshooting with solutions in the tomorrow sessions. Right? Any questions you can post in the chat or you can unmute and speak. I hope the session is useful to you. any doubt, you can ask me. Raji ma'am, uh, Rajalakshmi ma'am. Rajvi ma'am, are you there? Okay, thank you, ma'am. We can stop the session. It's completed.